At a lavish, glittering party, every guest was in high spirits, chatting and laughing merrily. The main character of the party was in a private room. Then suddenly, someone called out, "Sister." The beautiful young lady in a wedding dress wore a deeply sorrowful expression. The voice calling to her came closer and closer. "Sister Quinny." It was Angelina, who walked over and asked what her sister was thinking about. The young woman looked hesitant. Then her younger sister showed her a sparkling, luxurious hairpin she had prepared for her, even though the family was still struggling financially. Hearing that, the older sister felt a pang of heartache. Her younger sister cheerfully said, with the expression of someone trying to encourage her, "Sister Quinny only gets married once in her life." Then she looked at her sister worriedly and asked how she was feeling now. But the older sister truly did not know herself. Her younger sister smiled brightly and comforted her. "Everyone says that before a wedding." She continued, "With the standards of our family, being able to marry like this is already a very good outcome." The older sister could not understand what standards her family even had. Startled by her own slip of the tongue, the younger sister hurriedly apologized. She looked at her sister with concern and asked if she was unhappy. But the older sister still said, "It's fine. I'm Fina." The older sister really was not upset because what her younger sister had said was true. She was Quinny Soy. Today was her wedding and also the day a new family head for House Soy would be chosen. In the past, the ducal House Soy had been regarded as the Empire's one and only supreme family of mages. But that was nothing more than the past now. At present, House Soy was on the brink of collapse because of its declining finances. This blonde man was extremely excited when he saw Quinny. He rushed over, embraced his bride, and praised her beauty. This man was the one Quinny was marrying, Stephen Edbo. After the wedding ceremony today, he would become the family head. If this were the House Soy of old, he would never have been qualified for such a position. But given the current circumstances, he was the most suitable person. Quinny recalled her younger sister's miserable plea. Angelina had begged her, saying she no longer knew what to do. She had always tried her best in her role as the young family head, but no matter how hard she worked, the family situation never improved. Her younger sister begged her, for the sake of the family, to marry into the Stephen family. For the entire 15 years since their parents died, unable to endure the shock, Quinny had failed to fulfill her duty as the heir. Angelina had worked very hard to take her sister's place. Her father, who was also Quinny's uncle, had temporarily taken on the role of family head, but he was incompetent. So all the work had been handled by the young family head, Angelina. At that moment, Quinny stepped into the ceremony hall amid the whispers of the people around her. The guests gossiped about Quinny. They said she would not even take half a step outside the house, that she was nothing but a pretty vase. They said that since she could not become family head herself, she had to prop up her husband in her place. Without Miss Angelina, what would House Soy even become? And a fool like Quinty getting to marry the son of a newly rich family like theirs. How lucky could she be? At that moment, the bride and groom were carrying out the ceremony. Everyone always called Quinny a fool, a disgrace to the entire family, a coward who had abandoned everything after her parents' death. Quinny Soy, a foolish heir. Quinny encouraged herself. It was fine. She was still all right. If this could help the family, if it could help her younger sister. Her younger sister placed a crown on Quinny's head, and she bowed her head to receive it. The crown glittered with elegance and pride. Suddenly, her younger sister revealed a cruel smile. She pressed the crown down onto her sister's head while still praising how beautiful she was. Quinny's expression suddenly changed. Quinny trembled. Her younger sister pretended not to notice and said, "Don't cry, sister. I'll be sad to send you off too." Quinny grabbed her younger sister's arm with trembling hands. Angelina recoiled in fright and yanked her arm away, then put on an innocent face and said in a wounded tone, "Even today, do you still hate me that much?" Quinny did not understand anything at all. Her younger sister kept acting, looking miserable, saying that even so, she still hoped her sister would live happily. Quinny collapsed to her knees in confusion as she watched the scene. The crowd began murmuring sympathetically for the younger sister. The man who was about to become Quinny's husband actually defended Angelina and scolded Quinny, saying, "Don't you think you're going too far? Where could you ever find a younger sister who thinks of her elder sister like this?" Her younger sister said resentfully that because today was her sister's wedding, she had always indulged her wishes. But if things kept going like this, the wedding might have to be postponed. She suggested that the man go calm the guests a little, while she wanted to speak privately with her sister. The man still firmly believed that the younger sister truly was an angel. She walked over and bent down to look at the suffering Quinny. The angelic expression from before was now replaced by a cruel smile. She said, "You've worked hard all this time, haven't you, you idiot? I specially prepared this poison so you could die in the most miserable way possible." Quinny remembered the gentle words of her parents before they passed away. They had promised to step out briefly and return, and that on the way back they would buy her a gift. She remembered the happy image of the three of them as a family, and her father gently reminding her of the promise she had made to him. "Don't forget, my daughter." Quinny smiled happily and promised that she would absolutely keep that promise. But after that day, her parents never came back. Everyone mourned the Duke and Duchess, who had always embodied noble dignity and represented a great family. But tragically, they had died in an unfortunate accident. Quinny stood frozen, her smile gone. At that time, her younger sister took the initiative to come to Quinny. Tears streamed down Quinny's face in grief. Her younger sister approached with a worried expression. She said she had known it. Her sister was crying alone again. She asked with concern if Quinty had been unable to sleep as well. Seeing her older sister trying to act strong, the younger sister comforted her. "It's okay, sister. It's okay to cry. I understand how you feel." Then she scolded her sister for still refusing to eat anything and told her to drink the tea she had brought first. Quinty obediently picked up the teacup and drank, but then she jerked in alarm. Quinty felt as if her stomach were boiling. Her younger sister smiled faintly and asked if she felt any better. Quinty said that she had probably cried too much, so her head hurt a little. Hearing that, her younger sister immediately said she would call a doctor. But then she added that since Quinty had not eaten since last night, maybe she was simply hungry and urged her to drink more tea. Quinty looked grateful and said that without her younger sister, she would probably have collapsed. Her younger sister cheerfully replied that of course, she would always stay by her side. Then her younger sister said she had heard a strange rumor about the death of their parents. Quinty was told that they had died because of a mage. The older sister asked in shock what she meant, but the younger sister said she did not know the details either. After hundreds of years, a cursed mage had suddenly appeared. There was a rumor that this person had devoured Quinty's parents. The accident happened because a mage had broken a promise. Her younger sister repeated that it was because of a mage. Quinty blankly thought, but that mage was obviously me. Her father had told her she possessed an extraordinary power, but that it was still too dangerous. Until she could control that power skillfully on her own, she absolutely must not use it carelessly. Her father had made her promise him that. Quinty had also promised her father and thought that everything would be fine. She watched her parents leave. Then Quinty went into the forest alone. She had not kept that promise. Quinty thought it would only be for a little while. Her parents would not notice. Magic was just so much fun to her. At that moment, Quinty was horrified. Could it really have happened because she had broken her promise? Quinty steadied herself and asked why such a rumor had suddenly spread. Their family's very roots came from mages. Her younger sister said that was right. Ferdinand Soy was the founding hero, the only person blessed by the divine with magic. But that was all ancient history now. Her younger sister cheerfully said, "Just imagine if a mage really appeared now. Terrifying, wouldn't it?" Then she pretended to feel guilty and hurriedly said she was only repeating rumors, so her sister should not take it to heart. Her younger sister continued, "Anyway, there aren't any mages left in our family. What would any of this have to do with us?" Hearing those words, Quinty froze. Sometime later, Quinty was older. She was feeling dizzy and sat down in a chair when someone called to her. Her younger sister appeared again and asked after her with concern. Then she once again invited her sister to drink tea and comforted her, saying everything would be all right soon. She apologized for not being able to stay by her side because there was still so much work that needed handling. Quinty said she could not just sit still forever because she was the heir and had to set an example for everyone. But her younger sister immediately stopped her, saying, "Didn't the doctor always emphasize that rest is very important for emotional illness?" She told Quinty to leave all the big and small matters of the household to her and focus only on recovering. Quinty politely tried to refuse, but her younger sister quickly said that she was perfectly fine. Then Quinty went into the forest alone again. When she was able to use magic, it felt as though she had entered another world. Her heart became calmer too. Quinty only used it when no one was around, only when no one was there. After using magic, Quinty felt better and decided to take a short walk. Seeing her, the servants whispered among themselves, "Look at that idiot. Why did she step outside today? Miss Angelina is far too generous, sheltering a fool like that." Hearing those words, when Quinty turned around, the servants all flinched and hurriedly avoided her. Then they resumed laughing and talking happily. The scene had returned to the beginning. It was all terribly familiar. Quinty wondered exactly when this was now. Was this really before the wedding ceremony? Looking at this familiar scene, it was definitely this place. Everyone was still speaking ill of her. They said, "Where did that fool wander off to? Can someone tie her up or something?" But that would upset the family head. They told themselves they had to endure it for Miss Angelina's sake. After all, today was Quinty's wedding, so they just had to put up with it a little longer. Quinty thought to herself that she had definitely returned to that time. Quinty's reversal of time truly was a miracle, but time reversal magic did not allow one to go back too far. Quinty wished she could have returned to a time when her parents were still alive. Then she pulled herself together. The important thing now was that she was still alive. Once again, it was that smiling face of the man. He threw his arms around Quinty again. Irritated, she thought that even though this was the second time, she still simply could not stand it. Quinty calculated who would be the most useful person to her now. Among all the people here, not a single one was on her side. Every last one of them stood with Edler. Quinty needed someone to help her, but with her reputation as a fool, who would be willing to help? The thing that had helped her was magic. So what if she used every kind of magic she had? Over the past several hundred years, people's perceptions had changed greatly. To House Soy, magic was both power and pride. That was why her younger sister had made Quinty drink that suspicious medicine, clouding her mind and preventing her from using magic, the privilege of their family. House Soy had originated from magic. Unable to hold herself back, Quinty used magic, and flames immediately flared up. The tree in the vase was burned to ashes. A maid noticed it. She wondered where the flowers had gone. She had just arranged them there, and now the wedding was already underway. Quinty walked through the ceremony hall with countless questions in her mind. What if she told the truth, that she was not a fool? Or what if she said that she was a mage? Would that work? No, it would not. If she used magic now, then she would not be able to become the family head. Looking at her innocent-seeming younger sister, Quinty silently swore that she would definitely expose her crimes, and that she would destroy this hypocritical younger sister of hers. Quinty thought that someone would reveal the truth, that she was a mage, and that long-standing ally, a family of warriors of goodwill, was the only house that could help Quinty. At that moment, the oath-taking scene repeated itself. Her younger sister brought over that same crown again. The sight of her wishing her sister happiness was deeply moving. Behind that innocent smile hid a vicious demon. Her younger sister placed the crown on her sister's head. Quinty already knew what would happen next, so she was immediately on guard. She tightly grabbed her sister's arm. Her younger sister asked in confusion what she was doing. The older sister kept holding her arm without a word. Quinty brushed the crown aside and shoved her younger sister to the ground. Her younger sister once again put on a pitiful act. Quinty looked at the crown that had once killed her. Then she hurled it away without hesitation. Quinty thought that she had been forced to bear the label of a fool. In that case, she would keep smiling like a fool, and little by little, she would take everything back. Thinking that, Quinty still smiled in this situation. Calmly, she said that she would not marry. Then she turned and left. Quinty walked away leisurely despite her younger sister calling after her. Then Angelina ordered someone to stop Quinty, but Quinty quickly fled. Quinty ran to the ducal house calendar. This was her destination all along. 2 guards blocked Quinty's path, but she used magic to control them. The 2 guards did not understand what had happened. Quinty passed through the gate and apologized to them, saying she would explain later. Quinty entered the house, and there she met that man. She quickly stepped in front of him. Quinty bowed and greeted the man. "Greetings, my mighty lord." Seeing Quinty, the man merely smirked, then stepped closer to her. While Quinny continued to bow, she praised his proud wisdom. Then the man asked why Quinny had entered so rudely. The man called Quinny by name, so he really didn't know who she was. At that moment, the guards rushed in as well. They reported that she was the girl who often used despicable, underhanded tricks, so the man should be wary. The man ordered them to be silent, then asked Quinny what she wanted to say to him. He said that if she had nothing urgent to say, then she should go back. Quinny let out a breath and looked exhausted. Painfully, she began to explain, "As you know, I am to become the next family head of House Soy." Quinny said she needed his help. The current head of House Calendar looked at the girl before him. He thought that Quinty Soy, according to rumor, had become a brainless girl after her parents died, one who bullied and ordered her younger sister around. But in reality, she did not look anything like the mindless person those rumors described. Then he asked what reason he had to help her. Quinny said that according to the rules, if either of their two houses was in danger, the family head of that house could request aid from the other. The man thought of the promise between House Soy and House Calendar. Then he gestured and said, "But that agreement only applies when the head of House Soy proves herself to be a mage." He had no obligation to help a family head of House Soy who was not a mage. If the girl before him was the current head of House Soy, then that was even more true. Quinny thought in disappointment that, as expected, he did not believe her. Since the founding of the nation, Calendar and Soy had been steadfast allies. But things were different now. The relationship between the two houses had grown so distant that they could not even offer wedding congratulations. Quinny thought to herself that she really had been foolish. But then she asked the man what if she truly was a mage. If she was a mage, exactly as the agreement required, could he help her then? Quinny asked him with complete determination. Her eyes shone with resolve, and magic began to stir through the surrounding trees. The trees were all blooming in a riot of color. The man stared at the scene in confusion. Quinny stepped forward one step at a time. She walked with an extraordinary presence, leaving the young man dumbfounded. Was this what magic was? This was practically a miracle. Then Quinny withdrew her magic. She confirmed once more that she truly was a mage. Only then did the man speak. The guard were stunned by what they had just witnessed. Quinny hesitantly admitted that she could use magic. The young man promised to keep it secret, and so would his knights. Then he asked what help Quinny needed. He addressed her as Mage Soy. At that moment, back at the wedding hall, a troop of knights came riding in on horseback. The guests murmured in confusion. Who were they? Her younger sister grew angry. This was unbelievably rude. What exactly was going on? She recognized the man as the head of House Calendar. Her younger sister hurried over and bowed in greeting. The man replied indifferently, saying it had been a long time, young lady of House Soy. The younger sister was startled by how he ignored her greeting. Still, she put on a radiant smile and introduced herself as Angelina, the young mistress of House Soy. She continued, saying it was such an honor to meet him like this. She had never imagined that Duke Calendar would personally come to offer congratulations on such a joyful day. The man smirked and asked, "A joyful day?" He coldly asked who she thought she was making the woman he loved marry. At those words, the crowd erupted in chatter. The younger sister stood there blankly. His beloved? The man calmly answered that yes, she was the woman he loved, and the person he meant was Quinny. The younger sister was utterly shocked. How could her sister possibly? There had to be some misunderstanding. Meanwhile, Quinny also put on a happy, playful expression. Quinny looked at the man warmly and introduced him as her lover. The crowd broke into noisy gossip, while her younger sister was left stunned. She thought it was impossible. Everything had nearly been settled already. Then she said to the Duke that perhaps he could have the knights step outside, because with so many knights here, she said she felt a little frightened. Hearing that, the Duke gave a contemptuous laugh. He replied that the woman he loved was being married off to a stranger in a place he knew nothing about. Then the two of them put on a display of intimacy and passionate affection. Neither the crowd nor the younger sister could believe their eyes. How could he possibly stand by and watch? The younger sister thought the man clearly did not understand what she meant. Then, acting pitiful, she said the Duke was putting her in a very awkward position. She reproached him, saying that even if he was a duke, this was House Soy, so she hoped he would show proper respect, as if this were his own home. The Duke mocked her in return. Who was the one who should truly feel awkward here? How exactly was this awkward for the younger sister? He pulled Quinty into his arms and added that since this would-be groom had failed and Quinty was his lover, that meant he could take her away, correct? Stephen hurriedly answered yes. The Duke said cheerfully that now there was nothing awkward about it anymore. Quinty was secretly relieved that this man was by her side. Then the two of them excused themselves and left first, leaving the younger sister with a face full of rage. So the favor Quinty had asked of the Duke was for him to act as her lover. He asked again if she was really asking him to become her lover, in other words, her husband. Quinty affirmed that she was, but of course only for a fixed period. Marriage was always a political act, especially when used to strengthen one's power and restrain enemies. The Duke pondered deeply. Quinty proposed that rather than marrying some vulgar nouveau riche family, she would rather become his contract lover. It was not about toying with love, but about becoming each other's allies until Quinty reclaimed her family. The Duke laughed softly. After thinking it over, he gave his answer. He asked Quinty if she could guarantee that she would not fall for him once they became lovers by contract. Hearing that, Quinty cursed inwardly. What an arrogant man. There was a limit to mocking her. Seeing that she looked a little uncomfortable, he laughed and said he was only joking. Quinty thought this man was truly unbelievable. Then he asked what he would gain by becoming Quinty's ally. Quinty said that once he became stronger, he could have whatever he wanted. But the Duke did not agree. The condition had to be something that only Quinty herself could do for him. After finalizing the contract with Calendar, the chaotic wedding came to a brilliant end. Now Quinty needed more information. She was sitting in her room, thinking when she noticed something. At present, Calendar's knights were standing guard. Even her younger sister could not enter Quinty's room at will. She absolutely could not step inside. So Quinty began using magic. Vines started creeping out through the door and beyond the building. They spread across the entire estate. Quinty saw that outside House Soy's castle, there were also many of Calendar's knights. Was this to protect her? Quinty recalled the man's words, then dismissed the thought that he was protecting her. Clearly, he only wanted to keep an eye on her. Still, thanks to the Duke, Quinty was able to move about easily in the dead of night. It had been a long time since she had been able to go outside. Right now, Quinty needed as much information as possible. All this time, she had lived like a fool without knowing how much had happened in the Empire or how much the world had changed. Quinty went to a tavern. She ordered gin and another drink, as well as a serving of steak. The server was a little surprised by the order, but he quickly composed himself and prepared Quinty's food. Because Miss Quinty was the heir to her family, she had to know many things. A man had once promised that he would tell her about the Information Guild. Once inside the guild, the amount of information Quinty could obtain would vary depending on her level of access. She had to perform the designated identifying action of the Information Guild in order to raise her access rights. If she wanted low-level information, she simply had to order a lot of alcohol. If she wanted mid-level information, she had to order a blue margarita. At that moment, the food Quinty had ordered was also brought out. And in the Information Guild, if Quinty wanted to obtain the truly important information, she had to use a method that was a bit ridiculous. When she first heard the elder explain this, Quinty had not understood what the true core meant. The elder happily said that the only way to meet the specialist of the Information Guild was this. Now, in the tavern, Quinty gently swirled her glass. The server asked whether she wanted anything else. Suddenly, Quinty poured out her drink and criticized it as terrible liquor. This action left the staff dumbfounded. Not only that, Quinty also smashed the glass. Then she asked if there was no other kind of alcohol there. Quinty sneered that the tavern was truly shabby. If they had money, perhaps the place would look a little better. Quinty took out a stack of money and demanded that it be delivered to the owner. The server understood and smiled. He said he would inform the owner, and Quinty followed him to another place. The surroundings were somewhat hazy. Nothing could be seen clearly in this unfamiliar place. There was magic here, but it did not seem especially dangerous. Quinty could escape at any time. The server led her to a room and said someone would be waiting for Quinty inside. Quinty pushed the door open and entered. A mysterious man asked if this was not some kind of joke. Then he chuckled while Quinty stared in surprise. The red-haired young man was astonished that someone had really come in here. He seemed delighted and welcomed Quinty Soy to his city. He said he had been needing something a little more interesting, so he was very pleased to see Quinty come here. Then the young man stepped toward her. Suddenly, he pressed a knife to Quinny's throat and threatened her, asking if she was confident she could survive. Quinny was not frightened in the slightest. Instead, she revealed a mocking smile. She asked in return whether he was confident he could kill her. Besides, if he killed her right now, would that not be terribly boring? The red-haired young man was intrigued because Quinny was nothing like the rumors he had heard. Then he laughed in delight and said she was interesting. Killing her now would be no fun at all. Then he asked what information Quinny wanted, saying he would make her a special private sale. Naturally, if she wanted information, she would have to pay a high price. Quinny said she did not have much money at the moment, but she still wanted the information. The young man looked bored. He would not hand over any information unless she paid first. At that point, Quinny said she would pay him with a different price. Curious, the young man asked what that price was. It was the trust of the head of House Soy. The young man sat down to listen as Quinny spoke. She said he would become their future business partner. The young man laughed without much interest. Was that all the price amounted to? Besides, had House Soy not already declined badly? Quinny answered calmly. No. She clenched her fist with determination. From this moment on, this would be the beginning of House Soy. She boldly declared that in the name and honor of Ferdinand Soy, her family would rise again and be reborn. Boast all you like, Quinny, because you would not be able to show off like this for much longer. With fierce determination, Quinny declared that the young man would be part of that new beginning. She held out her hand to him, offering cooperation. Excited, the young man agreed, saying it did sound interesting. He would not demand payment right now, but that did not mean he was giving Quinny anything for free. Tell him what she wanted. Quincy then began making her request. Sometime later, she received all the information about this empire and the people around her. Quinny's cousin had done many things to destroy the family, and even more besides. Her younger sister had deliberately made repeated requests to have Quinny assassinated. Quinny had suspected that her younger sister would make some move, but the wedding had only just ended. The young man warned Quinny to be more careful around troublesome children like that. Quinny did not quite understand what he meant, so the young man spoke the name Block Daihon. It was a road where assassinations often occurred. At worst, he advised Quinny to deal with things before they became even more troublesome. Quinny reflected on this information, and the young man added something else. In any case, if Quinny started becoming boring to him, then the price of this information would be her life. Quinny rolled the name of that road over in her mind. The young man stared at Quinty in alarm and asked if she was not afraid of death. Quinty looked amused. So what if she was not? Had he not said he did not want her to become boring? The red-haired young man smiled with delight. He said with interest that a girl who did not fear death was incredibly fascinating. Elsewhere, a pigeon was carrying a letter. An old man received the letter from it. He gently took the message. He immediately opened it and read. The contents said that Quinny had contacted the Information Guild using the largest route. The old man thought that at last, dear Miss Quinny, she had truly returned. A group of people talked among themselves while the younger sister urged them to kill that woman as quickly as possible. One of them was pleased because at last the order had come. He had been waiting a very long time. They looked at the letter, whose contents said, seize the chance and kill Quinty in the cruelest way possible. Tear her to pieces if you must, and absolutely do not let her come back alive. The group was thrilled, so now they would get to drink Quinny's blood. They delighted in the idea of torturing Quinny. Blood that sprayed while the victim was still alive tasted best. What would the screams of a noble woman feel like, they wondered. They rejoiced that for now on no one would stand in their way. They had to celebrate properly. The group was overjoyed, thinking of how their new beginning would be decorated with Quinny's blood. But a voice suddenly rang out, shattering their dream, telling them not to go. One of them asked why not. They had waited so long to kill Quinny. Lately, no one had hired them to do anything at all. This man said there was no profit in it. Even if it was only a small target, they still could not send their whole upper tier out like that. Besides, this was Edliner's request, and she had invested so much money in them all this time. Moreover, the opponent was only Quinny. They would be able to handle it easily even without him. The next morning, a carriage was rolling along the road. It stopped in front of the estate. The Duke appeared, looking radiant. Quinny also ran out happily to greet him. The two once again acted intimately in front of everyone. The crowd whispered among themselves about the pair. They act pious on the outside while hiding daggers in their hearts. Hearing those words, the Duke cast a glance at the servants. They immediately slipped away in secret. Then the Duke and Quinty enter the carriage. She slammed the door shut. Quinty said angrily that he should not touch her body so casually. She emphasized that he should not grab her wrist like that. The Duke explained that he had thought she would praise him for acting so well. He complained that Quinty was truly heartless. Quinty reproached him, saying that was sexual harassment. Hearing that, the Duke became flustered. Taking advantage of the moment, Quinty warned him that from now on, he should be careful. The Duke froze at her attitude. Quinty felt extremely satisfied, but in any case, Quinty said she hoped he would always remain in good health. The Duke said it seemed he still had not told her something. Quinty said she was not a fool. Of course, she had already investigated the conditions desired by her counterpart and ally. The current Emperor Julius was an outright tyrant, with no talent in any respect. The only reason he had been able to become king was because the late emperor had doted excessively on Julius's mother. The late emperor had removed his own empress from her rightful position and put that woman in her place. And Julius, the child of those two, naturally became emperor. The problem was that this ascension had not been accepted by Duke Soy in Duke calendar. The second prince, Alexander, had been born to the emperor and empress. At first, because he was so intelligent and gentle, he had never intended to become emperor. Duke calendar had strongly supported this prince. When Julius suffered a crushing defeat after provoking a meaningless war with the Ep people, he tried to eliminate his enemy Alexander. As if Julius had been waiting a very long time to do this, he immediately proposed offering up the second prince as a hostage. The Ep people had always lived mysteriously in their own world. Humans cannot find them by ordinary means. The Duke said the Ep possessed mana different from that of humans. If it were Quinty, she might be able to find them. What he meant was the second prince, Alexander. Quinty looked thoughtful. The Duke also smiled mysteriously. Then the two of them reached out and shook hands. They clasped each other's hands firmly. At that moment, the carriage stopped. The driver announced that they had arrived. Quinty asked where they were. The Duke helped her down from the carriage and said she might not be pleased with this place. But Quinty did not even know where she had been brought. The Duke said this was a place where Quinty could learn anything about high society. He draped an arm over her shoulders and said with a smile that they had to show off their affection as allies. Did they not? He asked Quinty slyly, and the two of them went inside. A lady in a red dress bowed to them. The Duke smiled brightly and said he was very much looking forward to seeing a new image of his lover. Quinty played along and waved, saying she would be out soon. This was the most famous dressing room in recent times. Only noble women and highborn young ladies were allowed to enter. This was the place where information among the nobility spread the fastest. At that moment, the noble ladies were all whispering among themselves about Quinty. Quinty felt uneasy. For someone like her to be here really was astonishing. Both of those reactions were because of the Duke. Suddenly, an arm jabbed Quinty on the head. Someone pointed at her and scolded. "Do you even understand human speech?" The others joined in and mocked her too. So this is what a fool looks like. She really can't even speak properly. They had expected more from the person rumored to be involved with the Duke. But as expected, there was nothing special about her at all. Quinty thought it over. The only reason they cared about her this much was indeed because of the Duke. Those women kept sneering. Quinty was just the Duke's plaything and ought to know her place. At that moment, a young woman spoke up in Quinty's defense. Quinty had finally had enough, and she spoke up to retort. Quinty provoked them, saying that the lady in the red dress was even uglier than Angelina. Hearing that, the woman immediately flew into a rage. The others found it amusing and laughed in satisfaction, but they still told the lady in red to let it go, since Quinty was just a fool. There was no point getting hurt over the words of an idiot. Quinty mocked them again. "Then why are you all laughing? You're all ugly too." Then Quinty put on an air and said, "My Duke is not a member of the imperial family. But if any of you dare speak disrespectfully of him, I'll tell him everything." The lady in red choked on her anger, unable to respond. She went mad and started cursing Quinty, calling her a stupid girl who dared put on airs. But before she could finish, the chandelier above her head came crashing down. The chandelier fell, and the surrounding area was plunged into darkness. Everyone panicked and shouted for each other to run. Quinty was startled by the scene. She thought, could this be? A shadowy figure was creeping toward Quinty. He brandished a knife and charged at her. Quinty widened her eyes, and a flash of light gleamed in them. At once, the man's whole body convulsed as if struck by lightning. He panicked. What had suddenly happened to his body? Quinty had only stared at him. Just then, the knife in his hand was kicked away as well. It was the Duke. He appeared like a hero saving a beauty in distress. He pulled Quinty into his arms and said, "How dare he lay a hand on my lover?" The shop was now filled with noisy chatter. The Duke draped his coat over Quinty. Then he asked her about the intruders. "Is there anything you want to tell me?" The carriage set off again. Sitting inside, Quinty said with certainty that those must have been professional assassins hired by her younger sister. Her sister had always acted slowly and cautiously, all for the sake of killing Quinty. The Duke remarked, "That cousin of yours really seems eager to kill you." Quinty said that was why her cousin had even sought out Block Daihon. The Duke fell silent when he heard that name, because they were infamous, extremely brutal people who treated murder like a form of entertainment. He was worried that, in order to kill Quinty this time, they had even blown up that place. Quinty said they wanted to disguise her death as an accident. Her younger sister had funded them heavily, so Quinty needed to quickly find a way to deal with them. The Duke thought that cousin of hers had joined hands with those poison users. He could hardly believe it, so he asked Quinty whether her younger sister was really capable of doing something like that. But seeing Quinty smile, he became a little curious. It seemed Quinty had already come up with a countermeasure. The Duke found Quinty truly interesting. Teasingly, he asked, "What countermeasure has my lover come up with?" Quinty replied sternly that if he did not call her his lover when they were alone like this, then she would tell him. That form of address should only be used in crowded places. The Duke looked amused, stared at Quinty, and said he would consider it later. Helpless with him, Quinty began talking about an assassination organization opposed to that savage group. It was called Moonlight. Tonight, Quinty intended to go find them, but the red-haired man refused to introduce her to that group. Quinty asked why, but he would not say. She would understand when she met them. Those people were different from ordinary organizations. That was all the information she had, but Quinty liked the way Moonlight operated. It was an assassination organization opposed to Block Daihon. They took pride in the organization's long history. They acted according to their own beliefs. Their group only killed evil people. The Duke asked what he was supposed to do. He still called her his lover and said that if she needed support, he would do his utmost. Quinty thought about how her ally had rushed over in such a hurry to save her. But just how much could Quinty trust this arrogant man? Then Quinty proudly asked, "Who do you think I am?" Quinty was a mage, and the Duke was left speechless. In the end, all he could do was support Quinty. Since his lover was always trying her best, he ought to prepare a gift for her, shouldn't he? By then, it was already late at night, and Quinty set out to find that group. Quinty sank into thought, recalling how her hypocritical younger sister had rejoiced on seeing that Quinty was still safe. She had hugged her older sister, worried because an accident had occurred at the dressing room. Pretending innocence, she said she had heard that some stranger had wanted to harm her sister. Quinty cursed inwardly at how shameless and despicable her younger sister was when she herself had given the order. Quinty pushed her sister away, though she still forced a smile. She happily recounted that her lover had defeated the culprit. Quinty felt that she herself was becoming more and more thick-skinned. Moonlight was said to be operating in an abandoned village, and Quinty had gone there. It seemed the door here was supposed to open automatically, but nothing happened. Had Quinty made some mistake? But suddenly, the sound of a door opening rang out. Instead, thousands of knives came flying toward her. Quinty swiftly used magic to respond, stopping every knife that was attacking her. The knives fell one after another, but now she found herself surrounded by thousands of men. Quinty was alarmed. All of these people were injured. One of them spoke up. "Stop. Don't oppose a mage." He too was gravely wounded, but still tried to ask Quinty why she had come here. He asked again, why had a mage like her come here? Quinty guessed these people were definitely from Moonlight, so she said she had come to hire assassins. She had heard this was the group opposed to Block Daihon, but Quinty was bewildered by the scene before her. The man said their group had already collapsed, so Quinty should go home. He called her Mage, and Quinty asked who had done this to them. The man said it was Block Daihon. Quinty doubted it. That cruel group had always wanted to oppose Moonlight, but they alone could never have done something like this. If they could have, Moonlight would have disappeared long ago. It seemed they had used poison to ambush everyone here. The man explained that this was the first time they had ever encountered such a poison, so none of the members had been able to avoid it in time. Exhausted, he said it was a pity that there was no one left in the group for her to hire. Quinny anxiously told him not to speak anymore. Quinny suddenly turned around. She looked at everyone in the group. If they were left like this, they would all die. And that was exactly what Block Dion wanted. Just what kind of poison had made this organization end up like this? What kind of poison could destroy an entire assassination organization in the blink of an eye? Quinny fell silent in thought. She asked the man whether she could examine his condition a little. One of the members anxiously tried to stop her because they still did not know Quinny's identity. She might be one of those cruel people. The man looked at Quinny thoughtfully. He asked Quinny what she intended to do. Was there really anything she could do? Quinny said she could use her power to lessen his pain. The man agreed, and Quinny began treatment. His condition was not good at all. She examined the man's mana, and the result shocked her. The mana throughout his entire body had been completely sealed off. Mana was a force that sustained life, but it was not a physical substance like blood flowing through the body. Therefore, ordinary poison could not block mana. Quinny was stunned. How could this even be possible? If mana did not circulate properly through the body, a person would be unable to move and might even die in agony. But that was only a theoretical possibility on paper. It could not happen in real life. Quinny noticed something. She stretched out her hand and used magic on the man. He cried out in pain. The other members became restless with worry. But there was no sign in Quinny's eyes that she meant to harm this man. She was trying to heal him. Quinty used all her strength, and the man groaned in pain. Everyone watched anxiously. Quinty's face was full of concern as she confronted this poison. She recalled the image of her younger sister when she had wanted to kill her. Her sister had said she had used a kind of poison that would kill her elder sister in the most painful way possible, without leaving behind any traces at all. The poison had been on the crown Quinty wore then, the thing that had killed her. It was this very poison. Suddenly, a blade was pressed against Quinty's neck. One of the group members, worried, threatened her, though he did not know what Quinty's strange actions were doing. If anything happened to that man, they would hunt Quinty down and drag her into hell. Quinty looked at them, and their mana conditions were the same as his. Did Quinty even have enough mana to restore them all to normal? The man cried out in pain, afraid enough to leave behind his final words. If I die, the rest of you need to go. But Quinty smiled faintly. She firmly said the man would be fine, because Quinty would not let that happen. Everyone stared in shock at this power. A blue light illuminated the entire area. The members all worried over their leader. Quinty was still doing everything she could. Everyone held their breath, waiting for a miracle. At that moment, Quinty murmured, "My mana, burn away all of this filth." Quinty continued healing him, but this still was not enough to completely erase the poison from the man's body. Quinty had to restore his mana to its normal state. She called to the man and told him that if he could hear her, he should take a deep breath, then slowly exhale. Just repeat that over and over. The man followed her instructions. Quinty rejoiced inwardly. Good, his breathing had returned to normal. Stronger mana could now be absorbed into his body. The members watched expectantly. The man was gradually regaining consciousness. Quinty was almost completely drained. Suddenly, a flash of light burst forth. Quinty said that now his body had returned to normal. The man exclaimed that Quinty had saved him. It's a miracle. The man stood up, bowed respectfully, and said he would definitely repay this life-saving grace. Then he turned to look at his members. They were still in pain. Quinty asked what he was still doing, standing there for, then ordered him to quickly bring the others over here. The man was stunned. Was Quinty going to heal the others as well? Quinty said there was no other choice. She thought that since her younger sister had once used this poison on her, that woman might be even more deeply connected to this matter. Quinty silently blamed herself. If she had become the head of the family, then this would never have happened. So she said she would treat all of them, and then Quinty began healing each person one by one. One after another, she did her utmost. The other members stared blankly, wondering who this person was. Could a human body really contain that much mana? The others were healed as well. Overjoyed, they thanked Quinty. Wearily, Quinty said that it was all over now. She turned away, thinking how exhausted she was. Now she had to learn more about this poison of her cousin's. She was about to leave when the man asked, "Where are you going?" Quinty said she had already done everything she could, and now she had to return. The man said, "Didn't you come because you had business with us?" He asked what kind of help Quinny needed. Quinny said it was nothing. In any case, it was not that urgent anymore. She left that place, and dawn gradually approached. Only then did Quinny notice that daybreak had come. Suddenly, those people spoke up. They knelt before Quinty and said they would never forget her kindness. So they begged Quinny to give them a chance to repay her. They would do their utmost to carry it out. Quinny froze, recalling what the red-haired man had said. She would understand the reason when she met this group. These people were different from ordinary organizations. Quinny thought his words had been exactly right. They said they would do anything Quinny wanted, whether it was killing someone or obtaining some treasure. They would bring her everything. The man continued that if Quinny agreed, they would give even their lives to her. Even if Moonlight had only a single breath left, they would still obey her commands. The group addressed Quinny as master. Quinny thought that although they were an organization that killed only evil people and pursued justice, was it really right for her to take in an assassination group like this? But Quinny needed people on her side, so she agreed, because the servants of House Soy and even the people of Block Daihun were all on her younger sister's side. So Quinty needed to make this group her own. Then she introduced herself as Quinny Soy, a mage who appeared only once every several hundred years in the Empire. Quinny accepted them as her people. At that moment, a familiar figure appeared among the crowd. He wore a mysterious smile. It was the Duke. He remarked in admiration, "You really managed to settle things smoothly all by yourself, didn't you?" His lover truly was something else. Elsewhere, a young woman was walking through the darkness when suddenly someone called out to her. He greeted her. "Long time no see, Our Lady Adelina." The younger sister asked if there was something he wanted. She demanded to know why that fool was still not dead. Did he know how much money she had spent? Had he sent his best assassins or not? He said, "I told you." The Duke was with her at the time. The younger sister gave a mocking laugh. She demanded to know whether this assassin was blaming her. Furious, she rushed up, pointing at him, saying that if he had only used his best people, it would have taken just a few seconds to kill that idiot. He grabbed her wrist and shot back. "Then what are you planning to do about the losses you caused us?" The man demanded to know whether she had nothing to say about the poison she had given them. She had guaranteed that it would wipe out all of Moonlight. He was furious because the younger sister had been so certain of it. But then why had they all escaped without leaving a single trace? He was enraged, thinking that the younger sister had deceived them. The younger sister jerked her hand free and asked why it was her fault. It was because they had failed to verify things properly. What kind of assassins handled their enemies so carelessly? At that moment, that man appeared again and said there was nothing more to say to the younger sister. He admitted that he had been far too careless. Until now, the younger sister had been a great help to them, so he promised that he would kill the older sister no matter what. The younger sister warned him that House Calendar's guards had been greatly reinforced. Was he really sure he could kill her sister? He swore that he definitely could. Failure was not an option. That would never happen. He said he would tear Quinny apart piece by piece. The younger sister provoked him, saying that if he could not do even that, then the name Block Daihun would be stained. Wouldn't it? The man firmly insisted that he could do it. But in return, after this, their deal would also come to an end. He warned her that if she ever came back again, she might have to taste a kind of pain she could never imagine. At those words, the men around him laughed sinisterly and moved in, surrounding the younger sister. She immediately panicked. She hurriedly ran off and said he should save those words for that idiot instead. The man silently watched the younger sister flee. He thought she truly was a vicious girl. That night at Quinty's estate, she was fast asleep when a rustling sound was heard. A group from the brutal gang had arrived. Looking at her sleeping there, they remarked that even her sleeping face was rather nice. She really was pretty. An assassin stepped forward and said that with Quinty sleeping so defenselessly, this seemed easier than he had expected. Suddenly, Quinty opened her eyes wide and abruptly sat up. Quinty smiled in open provocation. The assassins had no idea what was going on. Quinty sat there with a foolish grin, but then one of the assassins was suddenly killed. It turned out that Quinty's people had already been lying in wait. Those assassins panicked because they had no time to defend themselves. The younger sister sneered, so they had failed again? She questioned them. Were those really Block Daihun's best assassins? They had talked so big that she had thought they would succeed. The assassin angrily replied that this was also the first time they had ever failed like this. The younger sister said contemptuously, "You already failed, so why are you still making excuses? If you cannot even kill a fool, then you are no different from her." The assassin asked what she meant by that. She haughtily asked whether he felt wronged. If he did, then he should bring her the result. The result she wanted to see was her older sister's lifeless corpse. The assassin said he had not known House Calendar's guards were that capable. Hearing that, the younger sister took another chance to mock them. So the assassins were just too weak? Those words provoked him, and he quickly grabbed the younger sister. He threatened her, asking whether she still wanted to remain safe and sound after saying such things. Seeing his expression, the younger sister immediately changed her attitude. Lowering her voice, she said she understood and had only said it in passing. If the problem was the guards, then she would think of something else. The assassin suggested that they needed to inspect the older sister's room again so that they would not fail next time. The younger sister agreed and told him not to make any more mistakes. At that moment, the younger sister recalled the black tea she had given her sister to drink. Its original purpose had been medicinal, but if too much was consumed, it would cause nervous disorder and mental instability, because the tea had been mixed with drugs to destroy both mind and body. But even though Quinny had become a fool, she could still happily run around all day. Even the crown coated with diluted poison, and even the people of Moonlight after being struck by it, still had not died. The younger sister was furious because nothing was going according to her wishes. She was determined that this time, she absolutely had to succeed. The next morning, someone infiltrated the estate. It was the assassin. He was certain there had to be something in Quinny's room. A maid told the guards that there was an order requiring them to leave this place at once, but the guards said they only took orders directly from the Duke. The maid said it was an urgent request from a young family head, but the guards still refused to comply. She threatened them, asking whether she should take this as Lady Quinty refusing the young family head's orders. Hearing that, the guard became somewhat flustered. Because of that, he agreed to leave. The assassin immediately began calculating. Even though those guards were easier to lure away than he had expected, they did not look strong enough to kill professional assassins. So what exactly had happened? At that moment, he slipped into Quinny's room and cheerfully said that the young family head had sent him to run errands for Quinny. Quinny was sitting in the room. She calmly asked who he was. The assassin smiled kindly and thought that, just as the rumors said, Quinny truly was beautiful. Now that those escort knights were gone, he could kill her immediately. He was certain he could not afford to fail again. But then he looked around. His attention lingered on Quinny's bed and the room itself. There was not even the slightest trace of any fierce struggle. At that point, he pretended he had made a mistake. He used that as an excuse to leave, then stepped out of the room and closed the door. Only then did Quinny wipe the smile from her face and throw him a chilling look. By then, the assassin had already left. A member of Moonlight then appeared in Quinny's room as well. She said that, as expected, they had come again. The man said that was a common method used by assassins. Once one of their comrades died, they would certainly come back to inspect the scene. Then Quinny asked whether everyone's lodgings had been safely prepared. The man bowed and said that everything had been settled, all thanks to Quinny. The entire village of Moonlight had already moved into the House Soy estate, and of course the younger sister knew nothing about it. Quinty used magic, and a mirror immediately appeared on the floor. Through it, she could observe the assassin situation. The assassin from before reported to his leader that there had not been any traces at all. The man found it strange. Was it not simply because that fool had failed to find anything? Then he angrily slapped the assassin across the face. The man berated him, saying that whoever could kill a professional assassin without leaving a single trace, and yet he still could not figure out who it was? That was how he realized it was Moonlight. The assassins discovered that their opponents were still alive, and he ordered them to quickly find those people's whereabouts. At that moment, the image vanished, and the mirror on the floor disappeared as well. The two looked at each other in silence. The man said, "So that is how it is. That gang has begun to move too." It turned out the Duke was involved as well. He had never believed that Moonlight were assassins. He asked whether they could really be trusted to protect his lover. He asked what they were searching for and why that gang was trying to assassinate them. The leaders said they only wanted to do whatever good they could. He explained that he had once been a knight of the former emperor, but after the current emperor was born, the former emperor suddenly changed greatly. So he left that position, and Block Daihun came into existence. To stop them, the leader founded Moonlight. Most of their members had knightly backgrounds, and they had always longed for a king they could serve, because that was the pride of a knight. And since Quinny had saved their lives, they now wanted to live and serve her as their sovereign. Quinty and the Duke silently looked at each other. Quinny said that Block Daihun had started moving again in search of Moonlight. If that was the case, then she had a proposal. Quinny said, shouldn't they act one step ahead of them instead? Then she turned back with a smile and asked the Duke if he would help. He sighed with an indulgent expression, placed his hand on Quinny's shoulder, and said of course. He would follow her lead in everything. After all, they were lovers, so they should join forces. The Duke smiled sincerely. Quinny stared blankly at his attitude. Then she smiled happily as well. She touched the Duke's hand as if wanting to hold it. In a dark alley, the people of the brutal gang were searching for Moonlight's whereabouts. They were certain that gang had already been cured of the poison. Otherwise, how could they have escaped without leaving a trace? They were full of confidence. Once they found them, death would be certain. There was no way Moonlight could escape again. They would surely crush them like insects. At that moment, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed, and the candle was suddenly extinguished. The two men were bewildered, asking why the candle had gone out and urging the other to light it again. Suddenly, a voice rang out. The path has been blocked. The two were stunned. What did that mean? It seemed an intruder had entered. Looking at the shadow approaching, the two cursed under their breath. That damn man. It was him. The man smiled, a smile full of contempt. It was the leader of Moonlight. He greeted the filthy lot of them after so long and prepared to draw his sword. Those men were full of confusion. Then they grew triumphant, thanking the leader for showing up personally. Let them hold a feast of blood. They were full of confidence. This time, they would kill every last one of Moonlight. The leader also drew his sword, his face filled with resolve. The two sides clashed fiercely. One of the evil faction's men trembled as he blocked the leader's attack. He was frightened because there was something very strange about the leader, very different from before. The evil faction's men were shaken. Could Moonlight really be this strong? The battle continued, and from afar, someone was watching with a faint smile. It was the Duke and Quinny. He said a day like this was rather pleasant. Quinny looked pensively at the slaughter. The evil men had fallen into pools of blood. Quinny stood in silence before the sight. The Duke said worriedly that, at a time like this, he probably ought to cover Quinny's eyes. But Quinty calmly said she was fine, because if she became the family head, she would have to witness such things many more times. She thought that after surviving once, even though she had already died once, and even if she died, or if others died, Quinny was no longer afraid. Standing beside the Duke, Quinny said, but truly, this really was a scene like watching the moon. Today, Moonlight might even be able to destroy Block Daihun. Suddenly, a shrill scream drew Quinny's attention. She said that was not the voice of any of these assassins. Quinny immediately hurried to check what was happening. Quinty and the Duke went to see. The two of them observed the situation. While standing in front of a door, the Duke carefully opened it. He said it did not seem to be an ordinary door. Hearing that, Quinty stared at it intently. She used magic again, and the door immediately opened. The Duke froze for a moment and praised her, saying that was impressive. Quinny asked whether he remembered how she had entered his estate before. Then the two stepped inside. They looked around the place, then stopped at what they saw. Outside, the assassin was already losing badly and was filled with fear. The leader looked at him with an icy expression. He pressed the blade of his sword against the assassin's throat. The others had all been taken down. The assassin anxiously looked for a way to escape. The leader threatened him, wondering where exactly he thought he could run. The assassin was terrified by the leader's pressure. He thought, had this man always been this strong? Then the leader pressed the sword tip tightly to the man's neck and declared that from this moment on, Block Daihun would cease to exist. The 8 Moonlight members cheered and urged him to kill the man, but Quinny stopped them. The leader was surprised to see her. Quinny stopped him before the assassin was killed. She emphasized that the leader must not kill that assassin yet. The reason was that an hour earlier, when Quinty and the Duke entered that room, they had seen something. Quinny asked in shock what this place was. Looking at the heaps of gold and valuables before her, this truly was Block Daihun's base. Quinny stated that even a noble family would not be wealthy to this extent. The Duke added that this had gone beyond the scale of an assassination organization. He remarked that Block Daihun really had expanded very rapidly in just the past few years, but Quinny believed they could not possibly have built a base and accumulated this much wealth on their own. Even with the younger sister helping them, gathering this amount of money should have been impossible. The Duke found it strange as well. The two shared the same thought. Only the imperial family could have done this. Then the two continued searching around the room and found something even more startling. It was a man hanging upside down. He was Count Filantino, the current emperor's political rival, who had suddenly disappeared one day without leaving a trace. The Duke finally understood how an assassination organization could have grown so quickly. Unexpectedly, he and Quinny had found the answer in a place like this, and that was why they stopped the leader from killing that assassin. Quinty said there was something she needed to confirm with the assassin, and she asked him who had forced them to do all this. The assassin remained silent. He tried to bite down on a poison pill and kill himself, but the Duke stopped him and snatched the pill away. It was a poison pill, the kind assassins used when they wanted to die. The assassin shouted that did they really think he would reveal anything? The Duke threatened him, saying it would be better if he confessed obediently. But the stubborn killer insisted that even in death, he would never speak. But before he could even finish his bold declaration, a mass of vines wrapped around him. Quinny had used magic. The assassin panicked, asking what was happening. Quinty asked the stubborn assassin with interest, "Really? Did he truly dare do such a thing?" Suddenly, the assassin grew frightened and addressed Quinty as Your Majesty. It seemed Quinny had used magic on him. The assassin fearfully said, "Your Majesty, how could your servant possibly do such a thing?" Quinny seized a chance to ask who it was they served. The assassin confessed that it was the one who supported the empire of Jazent, the pride and glory of all, His Majesty Julius Virgency X. The Duke realized that Quinny was using an illusion, causing the other man to become confused. She continued and asked what orders they had received. The assassin confessed that they acted according to His Majesty's orders, obeyed only His Majesty's sacred command, and punished the fools, those who failed to recognize His Majesty's greatness. Even the Duke had never expected something this absurd. Quinty then dispelled the magic and left the cleanup to the leader. At that moment, Quinny said to the Duke that she had to become the family head as quickly as possible. Quinny blamed herself for being so foolish. She had thought only her younger sister was supporting the assassins. But in truth, all of this involved the entire empire and the current emperor himself. This was no longer just House Soy's problem. Even though Quinny had already obtained House Soy's magic, she had not yet fully mastered it. Quinny thought that she had to find the Ep people and bring back the second prince. Quinny's face was filled with thought. Seeing that, the Duke also had many thoughts of his own. At that moment, they had also begun to set the fire and the flames quickly. Flames suddenly erupted around the crowd and Quinny. She watched the fire burn everything to ashes. Quinny thought that the day she became the head of House Soy, the power she had longed for would probably blaze up like this as well. At that moment, Quinty remembered her beloved younger sister. Back when Quinny was weak, she had appeared, pretending to comfort and encourage her. She had told her elder sister not to cry, saying it was not Quinny's fault, and then gently pulled her into an embrace to console her. Patting her softly, she said that she would always believe in her sister. Quinny frowned and sank into thought. Then she abruptly turned her head away and stopped looking. There was one more person she needed to deal with, Emperor Julius. Quinny tightened the reins with determination. Quinny was determined to demand an explanation from that emperor. The next morning, footsteps approached. It was our Duke. He came to see Quinny. She was leisurely enjoying tea at the time. Quinty invited the Duke in. Seeing that Quinny would not even look at him, the Duke remarked that it was quite a stiff greeting. Quinny shot back that this was already very polite by her standards. The Duke said he had hoped for something a little friendlier. Quinny quickly straightened herself and said they should stop talking nonsense and get to the point. The Duke smiled and said he liked how direct she was. Quinny looked helpless and asked, "Do you really?" Then the Duke glanced around at the surroundings and asked whether her younger sister's attendants had not come. He also remarked that this place seemed brighter than he had expected, though the path was a bit narrow. Quinny smiled mysteriously. She had been using this place as a practice site for magic for quite some time. Even the abandoned garden at the ducal estate of House Soy was practically like her base. The Duke praised it, saying it suited a young lady like her. Suddenly, Quinny lowered her voice and called to him. She spoke first. "My lord, I apologize. I panicked because of the drug and handed over the interests of House Soy to my younger sister." The Duke asked whether Quinny had been drugged. Quinny continued, "I thought only Angelina was involved in this, but I never expected the Emperor to be part of it as well." She bowed her head and apologized as a descendant of House Soy. The Duke said Quinty did not need to be so formal with him, because in truth, this situation was not entirely bad. He asked whether their goals were not the same. He asked if Quinny still remembered why he had made the contract to become her contract lover. Quinny answered that it was to search for the second prince, who had been captured and held hostage by the Ep people. The Duke said that was correct, but House Calendar did not support the current emperor. The previous Duke had also wished for the second prince to inherit the throne, and that man had been killed by the current emperor. Quinty was bewildered. The previous Duke of House Calendar? The Duke continued, saying that the power of House Calendar had gradually been narrowed ever since the current emperor inherited the throne. He was looking for an opportunity to drag the current emperor down from the throne. Quinny fell silent, thinking over that intention. She remarked that this was quite a dark matter to speak of so casually in a little garden like this. The Duke then asked whether Quinty wanted to get into the same boat with him. This was her last chance. If Quinny thought she could not endure this raging storm together with him, then she could leave now. At present, House Soy did not hold the staff in its hands. The Duke was startled. How could they have lost a family heirloom? This was the first time he had heard such a thing. Quincy said this was a truth known only to the core figures of House Soy. Even Quinny did not know where it had disappeared to, and the last family head of House Soy, who had been a mage, had erased the records of that staff. Quinty said they had to follow the traces and search for that staff. The Ep people were a tribe that had existed since ancient times. If they wanted to find their dwelling place through ancient magic, then they needed the magic of the phoenix of House Soy, who was slumbering within the staff. The Duke asked Quinty whether she knew where the staff was. Quinny asked whether she could go back for a moment. The Duke said of course. If it was Quinny, then certainly. Quinty said that in that case, she hoped he would trust her and wait here for a little while. The Duke agreed. He cheerfully said that had they not formed a contract lover pact in order to trust each other, a trace of sadness flickered through Quinny's eyes. Then she regained her cheerful expression and said he was right. The two of them sat in the garden amid the lively songs of birds. Quinny left to return to the estate. As she walked, she thought that her younger sister probably still did not know the assassin group had been killed, since she was still in such a good mood. Moonlight had already begun restructuring the organization as well. The leader said that although he had promised to protect Quinny, he would likely have to leave for a while to reorganize the group. Quinny happily agreed, since the assassin group no longer existed anyway. The leader instructed her that while he was away, he would place someone else by her side whose strength was no less than his own to protect Quinny. Quinny gladly agreed and looked very much forward to it. At that moment, something beside her was snoring in its sleep. Quinny stared blankly. It was a demonic beast. She crouched down to observe it. She wondered why a demonic beast like this was here. Quinny gently asked whether it was hurt. "Does it hurt a lot?" She reached out to touch the demonic beast. Quinty quietly observed it. The demonic beast floated into the air by Quinny's magic. Then it turned toward her and leaped straight into her arms. Quinny hugged the demonic beast too and warned it not to run off. It trembled in her embrace. Quinty examined it and saw that all the mana within its body was in complete disarray. Since demonic beasts were extremely sensitive to mana, it would be hard to move it right now, so she would have to treat it first. Thinking that, Quinty began treating the creature. She thought that it was still so small, so what on earth had happened to it? The demonic beast now lay obediently in her hands. Quinny asked whether it was hungry, then took out food for it. She did not know whether the food she offered would suit it, and asked whether it could eat it. The demonic beast obediently gobbled it down. Quinny watched it eat with delight, praising it for eating so well, then asked whether it had anywhere to go. The demonic beast seemed to say no. Quinny immediately continued, "If not, then you can stay here with me." She decided to give a name. Quinny chose to name the demonic beast Bobo. The demonic beast also seemed satisfied, rubbing against her hand and acting spoiled. Just then, the servants brought over a pile of precious jewelry and said it was a gift the Duke had sent to the young lady. Quinty's younger sister looked at those glittering treasures with greedy eyes. Quinty, meanwhile, happily rushed over. Smiling with delight, Quinty said that the Duke only had eyes for her because she was the most beautiful and most important person in the world. Perhaps that was why no one else mattered to him. Her younger sister nearly choked on her resentment. She stammered, "Is that so?" Then she left behind the words, "Then congratulations on receiving a gift from the Duke, sister," and asked to be excused to return to her room. She left in anger and slammed the door behind her. Seeing that attitude, Quinny thought it seemed her younger sister still had not heard that the assassin group had been wiped out. Then she noticed an unfamiliar maid. Quinty said she had never seen the girl before and asked whether she had just started working here. The maid politely introduced herself as Chun. Quinty then cheerfully told the maid to come to her room. A little while later, the maid came to Quinny's room. Starting today, this maid would also take on the role of Quinny's escort, and her name was Ale. Quinny cheerfully said, "It's nice to meet you. Please take good care of me from now on." The maid bowed her head and promised she would do her best to protect her mistress, so as not to tarnish her father's reputation. Quinny thought that she looked so young. Was this maid really strong? Then Quinny noticed something strange. Something about the maid's chest was not right. The maid immediately became flustered. The maid quickly bowed and apologized for her carelessness. Quinny asked in confusion, "Are you a boy?" The maid confirmed that he was indeed male. While adjusting his chest, he explained that he had been running in a hurry earlier, so the ring had probably fallen off. Quinny laughed awkwardly to herself, thinking, "Is this really okay?" At that moment, many letters arrived. Her younger sister checked them and found that they were all for Quinny. After the failed assassination at the Institute of Magic, invitation letters began arriving in a sudden flood for Quinny. Her younger sister could not understand what had happened. It had only been Quinty's first appearance in high society, yet even she herself had never received that many invitations. Could it be that the noble society had taken an interest in a fool like Quinny? Or was it because of the Duke's influence? A maid angrily spoke on behalf of her mistress, saying there had to be some mistake for so many letters to suddenly be addressed to the elder sister like that. She continued that perhaps her mistress had simply been too kind, which was why the nobles looked down on her. The younger sister feigned composure and said it was fine. Everyone would come to understand her abilities soon enough. Then she ordered the servants to throw away those useless letters. Inwardly, she cursed that idiot. She had lived quietly all this time, so perhaps they had never expected Quinny to be such an old fox. The servants sneered that she must be wagging her tail because she lacked the Duke's attention and had somehow managed to catch the noble's eyes. Others said Quinny just wanted to latch on to any man she could find so she could climb higher. They gossiped while despising Quinny, saying she wanted to seduce men so she could live in greater comfort. But one maid, hearing that, did not join the conversation. The other two maids still worshipped the younger sister. They found the maid named Angie a little strange and urged her to go burn the stack of letters already. Maid Angie hesitantly asked whether that was really all right. Those letters belonged to Lady Quinny. Could they really burn them so casually? She said she did not know whether they should do that. Even if Lady Angelina was acting on behalf of the family head, they still had not said anything about this to Lady Quinny. At that reaction, the girl received sharp looks from the other two. They stared at her coldly. Then, going too far, they splashed water onto the poor maid. The two women hypocritically pretended to be kind and asked whether she was all right, saying they had not realized someone was there and had accidentally thrown the water. They blamed the girl, asking why she had been stupid enough to stand there and get splashed. Arrogantly, they demanded to know whether she could not have stood somewhere else, as if they had not deliberately bullied her. But they had done it on purpose. The pitiful maid clenched her fists. Those two should have been the ones apologizing. The girl wondered what she had done wrong. Then one of the nasty maids asked Angie whether she was crying now. Had they made her cry? They continued bullying the little maid when another maid suddenly appeared and said that her shoes had gotten wet. What if someone walks through this puddle? The others shouted at her, asking why she cared. She should just keep working. Chun continued, "If you spilled water, shouldn't you wipe it up?" The two women still arrogantly asked Maid Chun whether she did not understand the situation. But Chun did not seem to care and simply said that right now, She needed someone who knew the estate well and asked the pitiful maid whether she wanted to come with her. She held out her hand to the girl. After hesitating for a moment, the girl took Chin's hand and agreed. Seeing that, the other two called out Angie's name, but the pair still walked away, leaving those two utterly baffled. But then the maid staggered as she walked, panting in exhaustion. The maid who was Quinny's guard asked why she could not find the room anywhere. Maisie asked which room. The guard replied that she had been going in the right direction this whole time, so why had she still not found the young lady's room? Then she suggested that they look for the young lady's room together. Hearing that, the maid burst into laughter and beamed, saying, "Sure, let's go together." The guard did not quite understand that reaction. A little while later, Quinny saw maid Angie. But who was that behind her? Quinny worriedly asked the maid why she was so wet and said she should go change clothes. The maid explained that it was all right, but Quinny said that would make her catch a cold, then told the girl to come inside quickly. The maid hesitantly said that if so, she would dry off a little and then leave right away. Quinny told Chun to help the maid, while she herself was going to rest. Watching Quinty calmly sipping tea, the maid Marie stared blankly. Was this really Lady Quinny? She was completely different from the rumors. Even if she was said to be a fool, Marie did not think Quinny was a villainous woman. Then the maid noticed the demonic beast. She asked whose cat it was. Quinny happily said that she was the one raising it, then asked whether the maid wanted to pet it. The maid gently touched the demonic beast and softly said, "It's very, very cute." The maid felt an unexpected warmth. Since becoming a servant of the ducal house, this was the first time she had felt such a warm atmosphere. And right after that, Quinny's maid was splashed with water, just like Angie had been. It was those same cruel maids again. They mocked her, saying, "What should we do? The fool's maid is all wet." They apologized insincerely, claiming they had not seen clearly ahead of them. Chun looked at them in disgust. They had done the exact same thing to that maid before. Did these people really find this fun? She coldly brushed past them, thinking there was nothing else to be done right now. At that moment, Angie saw her too and anxiously asked what had happened. She worried that Chun was soaked and asked whether she was all right. Angie asked whether it had been the same people who had done to Chun exactly what they had done to her. Quinty's maid told her not to worry. Kind-hearted Angie handed her a towel, but Quinty's maid brushed past her coldly, saying she was fine. Then suddenly she stopped. It seemed this maid was thinking about something. Then she asked again where the young lady's room was. Angie stared blankly at the question, then burst out laughing and said she would show her the way.